Let's just be real for a second. Life is absolutely filled with battles. Some of these conflicts hit us entirely out of the blue, right? Maybe it's a sudden illness, a profound loss, deep disappointment, or just this heavy cloud of uncertainty that won't seem to lift. But other battles are much quieter, though they're definitely no less real. I'm talking about the daily, grinding struggle against fear, temptation, discouragement, and those heavy pressures of trying to live faithfully in a world that so often pushes back. Well, today, we're exploring a truly profound historical text, Deuteronomy 20, and it serves as this incredibly powerful reminder that while your battles are inevitable, you never, ever have to face them alone. Take just a second and really think about this. What battle are you facing today, right now, and this very moment? We all carry something heavy. Maybe it's a fight for your health, maybe it's for your family, or maybe it's just a quiet internal battle for peace of mind. As we walk through this explainer together, I want you to keep that specific struggle right at the front of your mind. Because the ancient words we're about to unpack carry a weight, and quite frankly, a promise that directly speaks into that daily fight against fear you might be feeling right now. Section 1, Faith over Military Might, from Deuteronomy 20. Okay, let's dive right into this historical context. To really grasp the power of this text, we have to travel back to the moment Moses was preparing the ancient nation of Israel to finally enter the Promised Land. He knew, and they absolutely knew, that they were about to face incredibly powerful enemies and overwhelming physical challenges. They were a people standing right on the edge of massive conflict. And just look at this sheer mismatch. Humanly speaking, Israel didn't stand a chance. They were completely outmatched. Their enemies had horses, iron chariots, heavily fortified cities, and vastly superior numbers of experienced troops. Israel had literally none of that. Yet what's absolutely fascinating is that God's very first command to them wasn't to go sharpen their swords or build thicker shields or draft more soldiers. Instead, his command focused entirely on their spiritual strength and their covenant relationship with him. Imagine standing there before the battle even kicks off. A priest, not a five-star general, stands up before the people. His message was entirely spiritual. He tells them, "Do not be afraid of them, for the Lord your God is with you." The whole instruction was about strengthening their hearts rather than sharpening their weapons. Israel's confidence wasn't supposed to rest in their numbers or their tactical military skill, but solely in the presence of God. The Lord who had delivered them from Egypt was the exact same Lord going before them now. Moving right into Section 2, God's unconventional army and some seriously surprising exemptions. Let's see how this builds, because the military rules that follow this address are going to blow your mind. By any conventional military standard, ancient or modern, what God commanded next makes absolutely zero sense. But it reveals this deep, profound care for the everyday, personal lives of his people. This is wild. The officers literally started sending guys home based on a list of surprising exemptions. If a man had built a new house but hadn't dedicated it yet, excused. If he planted a vineyard and hadn't enjoyed the harvest, sent home. Engaged to a woman but not yet married, told to leave the battlefield entirely. God was showing that he genuinely valued their lives, their futures, and their families. He wasn't interested in building an army through forced compulsion or treating his people like disposable foot soldiers. He desired men who trusted him wholeheartedly, and he actually honored the sacred milestones of their personal lives. But here's what is absolutely fascinating about that final exemption. Even those who were simply fearful and faint-hearted were told to pack up and go home. Why? Because fear is highly contagious. A discouraged heart can spread like wildfire and weaken the resolve of an entire community. By sending the fearful home, God was actually protecting the faith of the brothers who stayed behind. He wanted an army marked by unwavering faith, not just reluctant participation. Which brings us to Section 3, Justice, Peace, and Stewardship, the ancient rules of engagement. The crucial point we're seeing is that this was an entirely unconventional way to view warfare. As we look at how these battles were actually fought, we see God placing very strict historical parameters on how Israel was supposed to conduct themselves. You know, the text shows us that peace was always the required first step. Before engaging in battle with distant cities, Israel was strictly commanded to proclaim an offer of peace. If the city accepted, bloodshed was entirely avoided. War was never meant to be Israel's first instinct, and certainly not their delight. The source text emphasizes over and over that God is a God of peace, and conflict was the absolute last resort. Now, the text also details a much more severe command regarding specific Canaanite cities within the Promised Land itself. The source explains this as an act of righteous judgment.
Historically and theologically speaking, this was God's action against generations of persistent, extreme wickedness. These nations had filled the land with idolatry, rampant sexual immorality, and horrifying practices, literally sacrificing their own children to false gods. The text states this severe command was designed to protect his covenant people from adopting those abominable practices, preserving Israel as a holy nation devoted solely to him. It's a stark, historical reminder of God's demand that his people remain separate from persistent evil.
But right alongside that severe judgment, we find this incredibly unexpected ancient command. During a long, drawn-out siege, the Israelites were explicitly forbidden from taking an axe to the fruit-bearing trees. They were not allowed to destroy the very resources that sustained life. This brilliantly illustrates that even in the utter chaos of war, God remained a God of order, wisdom, and mercy. He demanded responsible stewardship of his creation no matter what. Section 4. Our modern spiritual battlefield and the true fight today. Having looked at all that ancient context, we need to pivot here. Because while Israel's battles were fought on literal, dusty battlefields with physical swords and shields, the source material makes it abundantly clear that followers of God today are called to a completely different kind of fight. And this brilliantly illustrates the shift. Ancient battles were all about flesh and blood, geographical borders, and physical conquest. But for followers of Christ today, we don't wage physical wars to advance God's kingdom. That era is over. Our battle is entirely spiritual. The true fight today is about resisting sin, standing firm in faith, and overcoming evil with good. The Apostle Paul really anchors this truth for us, writing, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against spiritual hosts of wickedness." Those enemies we face, the fear, the temptation, those overwhelming pressures we talked about right at the beginning of this explainer, they are spiritual forces. And because the enemy is spiritual, the weapons we use have to be spiritual too. So what exactly does our modern arsenal look like? Well, Jesus equips his people with a totally different set of tools. Instead of swords and spears, we are armed with truth, righteousness, faith, prayer, and love. These are the actual tools we use to proclaim the gospel of peace and to stand resilient against the darkness of this world. Which leads us to Section 5, Stepping into the Light and the Ultimate Victory. This brings us to the most hopeful, uplifting part of our explainer. Because just as those ancient Israelites were told not to fear because God was with them, we have an even greater assurance today as we step into the light of the New Testament promises. The absolutely crucial takeaway from all of this is simple, but man, is it profound. Jesus has already won the decisive victory through his death and resurrection. Whatever it is you're facing today, you do not face your battles in your own strength. Your confidence doesn't need to rest in your own abilities, your intelligence, or your willpower. It rests entirely in the Lord who goes before you, who already secured the ultimate victory, and who promises to never, ever leave or forsake his children. I want to read you this portion of a prayer drawn directly from our source material. Heavenly Father, thank you that I never face life's battles alone. Guard my heart from sin, teach me to pursue peace whenever possible, and clothe me with the spiritual armor you have provided. Strengthen my faith so that I may stand firm in every trial. That right there is the posture of a heart that truly trusts the Lord. So, we end right where we began, looking straight at the battle you are facing today. The historical text of Deuteronomy 20 isn't just some ancient history lesson. It is a living, breathing reminder of God's character. I'll leave you with this final question to chew on. Are you going to rely on your own strength, or will you walk forward in faith today, completely trusting the God who fights for you? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope it brought you both clarity and courage for the road ahead.